When it comes to ancestor worship, people think that by honoring their ancestors, they're bringing or retaining good fortune. That's why they do it. Now look, I already explained in another video, which was directed at black folks in particular, but it counts for everyone, that you cannot talk nor communicate with your ancestors. It's only when Christ returns that they will be resurrected. Okay? And there may not even be time for you to relate to all of them, because many of them may not even want to relate to you, because not all your ancestors were good people. I already explained that. In this video, I want you to consider the following. If your ancestors were involved in some type of collective wickedness, you are not responsible for that. You cannot be responsible for it because you were not there. You were not born. You did not participate in it. What happened, happened, okay? But because you are their descendants, what they did has consequences for their posterity. That includes you. So you inherit the consequences of what your ancestors did. Does that mean now that you have to carry those consequences throughout your life? No. You can be delivered from those consequences if you forfeit the negative ways of your ancestors. What often happens is that violence is transferred from one generation to the next. So it's the same conflict working out through other people. But we see it as separate conflicts. No, it's one conflict. If you inherit conflict or violence from your ancestors, you need to forfeit it. You need to unlearn it. Because as long as you're not delivered from the consequences of the crimes of your ancestors, then evil spirits have a hold on you. Are you responsible for what your ancestors did? No, absolutely not. You can't be responsible or accountable for it. But you are responsible in breaking the cycle so it won't continue in you nor through you. With too many folks, the violence of their ancestors continue with them because, first of all, many are ignorant. They really don't know any better. That's one reason. And secondly, some folks just don't want to face it. And thirdly, some are deceived into thinking that everything depends on their own effort. No! Not everything depends on your own effort. Because you're not the Most High. Okay? And here's the thing. When you notice there's dysfunction around you, it's not just you. Others also involved. So you're not expected to fix everything. That's not even possible for you to do. What is possible for you, and what you should do, is seeing the pattern and seek deliverance from it. That's the only thing you can do. And that's what the Most High expects you to do. Look, let me give you a quick parable. If you have a guy called Hans, I'm using a Dutch name now, and Hans rented a plot of land from a landlord. But he didn't pay the rent. And for some reason they couldn't kick him out of the property because he had a herd of swine, and the swine would attack people. And he had those swine running around like crazy around his property. He did this on purpose to prevent bailiffs from kicking him out. So he lived there for free, at the expense of the landlord. Hans died, the landlord died shortly afterwards. Now Hans's grandchildren, let's call this one of his grandchildren Bert. Bert now receives an invoice of, let me say, back then in the Netherlands used guilders. He receives an invoice of, let me think of a number, 350,000 guilders. That was a lot for that time. Calculate in today's money would be a few millions of euros. And Bert went to the judge with his invoice, and he told the judge, Your Honor, how can I owe anyone 350,000 guilders? I'm only 17 years old. Where did I loan all that money? What could I have done or damaged to owe anyone that amount? And then the judge told them, Bert, this isn't you. Your grandfather robbed and exploited the landlord that lived over there. And the family of the landlord went bankrupt. And the bankruptcy of this family caused more damage in the community. Your grandfather, Hans, died. You probably knew him. And Bert says, yeah, when I was 8 years old, he died at age 95. So then the judge told him, this 350,000 guilders is the claim some scammers have concerning you. You cannot be responsible for what your grandfather did. Impossible. Nobody can come to this court and file a report against you saying they want you to pay for what someone did over 120 years ago or 150 years ago. That's not possible. But Bert, you have scammers that are exploiting the past to trap you. So what I want you to do is to forfeit any debt your father had, because they're using your father as an excuse to come to you. Then Bert said, well, my dad died in a war against England 4 years ago. And then I just told him that's why they're doing it, because you're now vulnerable, you don't know any better, and now the scams can come after you to make you pay for something you can't be accounted for. If you don't resist this, nor you seek any deliverance from this, Bert, you'll end up losing your house, you'll end up in jail, or you end up executed, because they will use this scam to convince others that you are guilty, even though you have nothing to do with it. And Bert said to the judge, Your Honor, how is this possible? The judge told him, there were many people like you. They end up in jail for decades because they were blamed for things they didn't do. Pay attention. Next time an invoice comes, send them to us. Send it to us immediately. And we'll send our officers to deal with those scammers. And those scammers know who we are. So when we appear, they are gone. Now that's how, according to, let me say, think about this parable. That's how it goes in the paranormal. Your ancestors were involved in the negative, so demons will fed off of them. Your ancestors pass away, the violence transfers to the next generation, and the demons want to retain this hold. Okay? And demons want to retain this hold to feed themselves. So the demons are the scammers that will charge you what your ancestors did. The Most High is not going to charge you. A lot of people read what's written in the book of Exodus out of context. In the book of Exodus, the Most High says that he will hold accountable and that he will come after those that hate him, whether it's 3 or 4 generations later. Does it mean now that the 3rd and 4th generation are responsible for what the 1st and 2nd generation did? No. But what the Most High said is that everyone that participates in evil, well, they won't escape. But the Most High also rewards those that hold on to his covenant. Now listen to this. When it comes to generational curse, a lot of people think, well, my grandfather did something, now God is punishing me for my grandfather did. No, that's not how it works. The Most High wants you to be free from the charge of your ancestors. And the only way to be truly free from it is when you agree with him. Look, you don't have to be wicked to suffer the consequences of what your ancestors did. You don't have to be. Those in the 3rd and 4th generation that hate the Most High, that are in agreement with the evil of their ancestors, they will be destroyed together with their ancestors because they'll be thrown in the lake of fire. That's what is meant in the book of Exodus. Not that your grandfather, for example, cheated on his spouse, or your great-great-great-grandfather cheated on his spouse, and now you encounter under relational difficulty. as punishment for what your great-great-grandfather did. That's not how it goes. Absolutely not. Demons want you to think like that, and they used Babylon churches to trick you in this false belief. And because you had this false belief, demons could exploit this. But that's not how it works. The Most High is not in the business of destroying people. Evil people are destroying themselves, and they want others in their self-destruction. And the Most High will redirect things in such a way that evil folks will only destroy themselves, and he will, he will deport them to the lake of fire, where their self-destruction will only afflict them for all eternity. That's what the Most High will do. The Most High is not going to hold you responsible for what your ancestors did. But look at this. Demons want you to think you are responsible for what your ancestors did. Demons want to charge you so they can use you, because they need to feed off of you. Demons are scammers. And that's why I'm telling you, you need to forfeit the relief seeking of your ancestors. Unlearn the wicked ways of your ancestors. For example, if you belong to what they call if you belong to the Judean, one of the Judean ethnicities, because you belong to the black community. Because the black community are the descendants of the tribe of Judah, okay? So, if you belong to one of the Judean ethnicities, or you belong to the black community, let me just use the term black community now. Think about the following. When the Portuguese arrived, it's not in the early 1500s, it's in the late 1400s they arrived. Well, the first ship arrived in 1444, but the real, I would say, intense trade in slaves really emerged at the late 1400s. When the Portuguese came to take away prisoners, why didn't your ancestors look at the bigger picture? They also came for trade. They had overseas, overseas towns in the Caribbean. At the time, people knew the Caribbean and the Americas existed, long before Columbus was born. Why didn't your ancestors, or I said our ancestors, why didn't our ancestors look at the bigger picture? Why didn't they ask why didn't they ask the right questions? They should have sent diplomats to Lisbon in Portugal and asked the Portuguese king, why are your sailors coming to our shores all the time? They keep telling us about their projects in the Caribbean, at the Taino Indians, at the islands of the Taino Indians. Okay, good for you that you have overseas territories and you're trading with the Taino Indians, but we're wealthy over here. We're rich over here. We have institutions, we have universities, we have everything here in what you call the West of Africa. Why is it that your people keep coming to our shores and they keep begging for us to trade with them? If you have those overseas territories over there, why do you keep coming here? And let me say 100 years later, when Spain became involved, they should have undertaken action and think, hold on a minute. Why are those Spaniards here all the time? They should have asked deep questions and they should have taken measures. I'm not saying it never happened, okay? I'm not saying that none of our ancestors did anything against the suspicious manners of the European traders. But what I am noticing, it is a pattern that they didn't look at the bigger picture, and therefore only when it was way out of hand that the west of Africa was in the process of becoming depopulated, that they woke up. But then it was way too late already. That's why I tell you to always look at the bigger picture. This doesn't only come for black folks, okay? It comes for everyone. Look at the bigger picture. Unlearn the relief seeking of your ancestors. You're not responsible for their neglect or for them fleeing from things. You weren't there, okay? You live now. To prevent scammers, to prevent demons from scamming you into bondage, forfeit the relief seeking of your ancestors. Agree with Christ and be at peace.